Greetings, guitar fanatics, and welcome to 2023. You know, when the new year rolls around, so many of us feel the need to set crazy resolutions for many areas of our lives. And those things usually become the stuff of thousands of internet memes and millions of failed gym memberships. And you know, when we're talking about playing and learning the guitar, it's really easy to set out with the best of intentions in the new year. And yet somewhere along the line, we find ourselves, we get sidetracks, things go off the rails, and we end up getting nowhere. Well, not this year. In this video, I'm going to give you some goal setting strategies that really work. And I promise you, if you apply yourself and you put in some work, you're going to make massive gains in your playing this year. And it doesn't matter if you're an acoustic player or an electric player, if you're a folky or you're a metal god. If you want to get better, then this is the video for you. So let's start this new year off right and let's get right into it. Goal setting is all about taking active steps to achieve your desired outcomes. Maybe your dream for the guitar this year is to learn 10 songs from start to finish. Maybe it's to learn the modes of the major scale and be able to play them in all 12 keys. Maybe you want to get the lead guitar spot in the hottest band in town. Maybe you want to release a record. Whatever your dream is, every objective requires setting small and big goals. Right away, it's really helpful to realize that there are 3 types of goals that you can be setting, and those are process goals, performance goals, and outcome goals. Process goals are specific actions or processes of performing. For example, you might set a goal to practice a specific skill for 30 minutes every day and then record yourself playing that skill at the end of every week. You, the individual, are able to control your process goals 100%. So these things are totally on you. Now, performance goals are a little different, and they're based on standards that are 100% personal to you. For instance, it might be something like learning enough songs to play a gig in 90 days, or learning a scale in all 12 keys by the end of the month, or learning a Van Halen solo by the end of the week. Personal goals are mostly controllable. And then we have outcome goals. Outcome goals are based on winning. For guitar players, that might be something like getting the lead guitar spot in the best band in town, or having your band land a headlining gig at a big summer festival and making some really good money. Outcome goals are really difficult to control because they involve outside influences. So process, performance, and outcome goals, while they're very different, they're also related, and it's a direct linear relationship. So your process goals, they're 100% controllable by you. And that means if you have the discipline to stick to them, you have a very good chance of achieving your performance goals. And it just goes to follow, if you're knocking your performance goals out of the park, it greatly improves your chances of accomplishing your outcome goals. So here are some general goal setting tips. Now, these would work for really any aspect of your life, but I'm going to do my best to relate them to learning and playing the guitar. Number 1, you should set both long-term and short-term goals. Now, this one is pretty straightforward, but I've always found it very helpful personally to have my short-term goals directly related to my longer-term goals. For instance, let's say we have a short-term goal of learning some new chord shapes and voicings. We might want to learn 4 new voicings of major 7th and minor 7th chords, and we give ourselves 2 weeks to do it. What I see people doing, though, is sometimes we'll take a short-term goal and we'll accomplish that goal. Think, okay, I'm done with that, and it just sort of dies. And my thought would be, okay, so you know some new chord voicings, so what? What are you going to do with them? Well, you could set a longer-term goal. You could say, over the next 2 months, I'm going to take 10 songs that I already know pretty well, or very well, and I'm going to incorporate all my new chord voicings into those 10 songs and play them in an entirely different way. If you're into the blues, you could make a short-term goal of, say, learning 5 cool licks by Marcus King or Joe Bonamassa over the next week. But again, so what? What are you going to do with those licks then? One of the biggest mistakes I see students make, and I'm certainly guilty of it, is learning a lick or a phrase and you get it under your fingers and then you just sort of forget about it. It just sort of dies. Why don't you take that lick and connect it to a longer term goal of learning it, say, in all 12 keys, or learning it in every position and every string set that it can be played all over the fretboard? How about taking those licks and playing them along with backing tracks, different keys, different tempos, different styles? How about incorporating them into a bunch of tunes that you already know and play? You could make an even longer term goal of taking those 5 licks and either changing them around a little bit or incorporating them into licks that you already play and turning the original 5 licks into 20. So yes, you've got to set and achieve short-term goals. But once you achieve them, don't just let that information fade away. Connect it to some longer-term goals and keep building on it. So strategy number 2, you need to set SMART goals. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with this acronym, but if you're not, that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relative, and time-based. Let's go through these criteria one by one and apply them to our guitar playing. So specific, one of the things that really drives me crazy when I'm talking to students or friends that play the guitar is I'll ask them, hey, what are you trying to do with your guitar playing? And they'll say something like, I need to learn some more chords, or, well, I'd like to get faster, or, I'd like to learn some blues. And these statements are next to meaningless because there's not nearly enough information in those statements to give the person any chance of achieving whatever sort of namby-pamby goal that they've put forward. If you really want to have a chance of attaining a goal, you have to be able to break that goal down into a highly detailed statement of what it is that you want to accomplish. Where are you now with a particular skill? Where do you want to be? How long do you think it should take you to get there? What is the process that you're willing to commit to reach that goal? So a non-specific goal might be, I'd like to learn some Eric Johnson stuff. Where a specific goal might be, I want to learn Cliffs of Dover this year by May 15th. And to do that, I've got to be able to play pentatonic scales in triplets at 180 beats a minute. And right now, I can only do it at 130 beats a minute. So then I can put together a timetable for increasing my speed. I'm also going to need to learn some diatonic spread triads, first inversions in the key of G, starting with the root on the 4th string. And I'm going to chart those out by February 1st, and I'm going to learn them by February 15th. And it's this kind of granularity that's going to give you the clarity to really help you reach your goals. So the M in SMART is measurable. How are you going to demonstrate and evaluate when your goal has been met? Now, with guitar playing and musical skills, this is pretty straightforward a lot of the time because there's going to be some sort of a timekeeping element involved. For instance, if you're trying to learn 3-string diatonic arpeggios and you're trying to learn them on each string set all the way up and down and across the fretboard, and you're trying to do it at a certain tempo, you either can or you can't. But you can always find a tempo at which you can be successful at a given point, and you can increase that tempo over time. Another thing that is not as black and white as the actual tempo, but it is certainly measurable to you, is the ease with which you can accomplish a skill at a given tempo. Let's say, for instance, you want to learn the Andy Timmons song, Electric Gypsy, and you can play the notes up to tempo with the actual recorded song, but it's not easy for you. You hit a bunch of clams, you can't quite execute the phrasing properly. We've got to make notes of all of this stuff, and then those notes are going to allow you to go and you're going to work on your weak areas until you get those things up to speed and you eliminate them one by one. So that's something you can measure. Or let's say a blues player and you're working on improvisation. Well, you can test yourself by seeing how many times you can play through the 12 bar form of a song and solo until you start repeating yourself. Or you might decide you want to play a bunch of double time phrases. Again, how smoothly can you do it? How long is it until you run out of ideas? These things are measurable. Let's say you're working on your phrasing. How many different ways do you have of making variances in a simple 2 or 3 note lick? If it's only 2 or 3 different types of phrasing, that's measurable and it tells you you got a lot of work to do. So the A in SMART, well, that stands for achievable. You want to make sure that the goals you set are within your grasp to achieve. I would love to fly around like Superman, but I don't think that's a particularly realistic goal. And if I were to make an analogy to guitar playing, for instance, let's say I wanted to improve my legato playing and I made a goal of being better than Tom Quayle at legato by the end of the year. Well, Tom Quayle is an absolute master. He may be an alien, and in either case, he has devoted many, many years, an incredible amount of time and effort into perfecting a very specific legato language and style. So for someone to take up the legato style playing in the middle of their own career after playing another way for years and years and years and have the goal of being better than an absolute master like Tom Quayle, that's not realistic either. However, you could have the goal of being able to play seamlessly through all 7 positions of the 3-note per string major scale forms in all 12 keys at a certain tempo by the end of the year. That would be an attainable goal. Something like learning Joe Satriani's entire catalog by the end of the year, probably not attainable. But if you were to decide, for instance, to learn a credible version of one Satriani song and have it performance ready by the end of the month, of each month, well, that might be attainable if you have that skill set. Again, it's all about being honest with yourself about where you are now in your playing. Setting goals that are too easy, well, that's not inspiring. But setting goals that are way too difficult, well, that's going to crush your motivation and your incentive for practicing. R in SMART, that stands for relevant. And the question is, do your goals align with your objectives? I think the main thing to focus on here is to make sure that the goals you have are really your goals, that you've done some soul searching and you've really decided upon what's important to you and inspiring to you in your playing. Putting pressure on yourself to learn something for the wrong reason leads you down what I call the long road to nowhere. For instance, if you're a blues player and for some reason you set a goal of learning a bunch of fast scale sequences, is that really where your heart lies? Let's say you're a country player and for some unknown reason you've decided you want to learn a bunch of metal sweep picking licks. Are you really going to devote yourself fully to that? Now, I'm not saying that you can't have multiple interests, and I'm definitely not saying that it isn't fun to learn things just for the sake of learning them sometimes. But be true to yourself, be honest with yourself, and set goals and objectives that are going to lead you to be able to play the way that you want to play. So the T in SMART, that stands for time-based, and you should set a target date for completing your goals. Or better yet, you should set a series of target dates for completing sections and parts of your goals. I read a quote not long ago that said, a goal without a timeline is just a dream, and it's absolutely true. A big part of the whole idea of setting up processes to get you to where you want to go is doing it within a specific time frame. When you set a time frame for a goal, you have to accurately assess where you are now, the gap between where you are now and where you want to be, and how much work that you're going to have to put in that time frame to accomplish that goal. You might realize you gave yourself too much time, and that's going to make that goal unmotivating. The flip side is you didn't give yourself enough time, and therefore the goal is not realistic. But if you don't put a date out there for completing something, you never really know. Having that date out there, it also puts a little pressure on you, but it's a good kind of pressure. It puts pressure on you to really challenge yourself and perform. Once again, the key is being realistic and honest with yourself. Strategy number 3 is to set goals that really motivate you. Remember, you got to be honest with yourself. And the best goals, the ones that are really going to get you to pour 100% of yourself into accomplishing them, are the ones that come from in here. Guitar can be pretty damn hard sometimes. And if you're not learning it for the right reasons, the frustration can be really hard to overcome. What are the aspects of music and guitar that really get you going? What is it that inspired you to pick up the guitar in the first place? Take some time to revisit those sources of motivation. Constantly ask yourself, what do I really want to do with my guitar playing? Where am I lacking? And what am I already good at? What's it really going to take for me to get to where I want to be? If you're honest with yourself and you take some time to really think about this stuff, you're going to come up with a great list of meaningful goals very quickly. Strategy number 4, adjust your goals as necessary. This is a huge step because goals are a dynamic, living thing. Your interests are going to change over time. Your influences are going to change over time. You might hit a goal much quicker than you thought you would. Or over time, you might decide something that you thought was important is no longer interesting or relevant to you. So you have to adjust your goals or you run the risk of stagnating. So as part of your process, you should set a time for reviewing your goals and where you stand with your progress. A good starting point might be every 6 weeks for a real honest assessment. Are you on track for completion? Or have you gone completely off the rails and you're in need of a reset? Once again, honesty is the key here. Strategy number 5, write your goals down, put them in a place where you can see them. Now, you've probably all heard stories, motivational speakers talk about people that print out their goals and they put them on the bathroom mirror or they put them on the refrigerator door. Well, if that floats your boat, then go for it. I think it can be just as effective to save them on the desktop of your computer and to glance at them once a week to keep them fresh in your mind and to keep your mind focused. And this will also help you with the previous step of adjusting your goals when necessary. Step number 6, recognize and reward yourself when you achieve a goal. You know, when you do something good, I think it's super important that you give yourself a pat on the back and give yourself some recognition for a job well done. I also think it's important that you reward yourself. Now, this doesn't have to be anything crazy, but as you accomplish bigger and bigger goals in life, the rewards can get bigger and bigger also. If you hit a short-term goal, something like taking yourself out for a nice dinner might be in order. But if you hit a really big long-term goal, something like landing a great gig or releasing a record, well, maybe buying a new guitar or treating yourself to a new amp might be in order. And always, as corny as this might sound, the greatest reward is the satisfaction and the feeling of accomplishment that you're going to get as you tick off these milestones and you get better and better and better on your instrument. Hey, so once again, Happy New Year, happy 2023 to all of you. And I hope it's going to be a great year that's going to be packed with enjoyment and improvement on the guitar. You know, I'm going to be here doing my part. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to keep making these videos to help you make sense of soloing. You work hard, play hard. I'll see you again soon. Cheers.